Hey, this is Matt Wenning at winningstrength.com, and today we're going to go over some opinions. And my opinion or my thought process on this is, what is the hardest sport in existence? Now, all of us have our own different views on this. I'm just going to give you my view and give you some kind of background info on why I think that this is the hardest sport in existence. So stay tuned. Okay, so let's look at some common sports that we have in the United States. Football, right? Football requires power, requires a lot of speed, requires a lot of hand-eye coordination, requires you to be able to sprint in a straight line and change direction. I mean, it requires a lot of different things. But I wouldn't say that it's the hardest sport in the world to do. Now, the reason that you see a lot of people now that are so successful in the NFL is because they're kind of have the genetics to play. I mean, guys, let's say on the defensive line are average of 6'5" to 6'7". They can run insane amounts of 40. So I consider that to be a very genetically talented sport. But I wouldn't say it's the highest skill sport. And trust me, just bear with me and let's go into some reasons. The next sport that I think would be insanely hard to play at a high level is going to be pro baseball. Pro baseball has been shown to be the hardest thing in the sport to do is to hit a baseball at like 100-mile-an-hour fastball. It's just totally insane. I think you have a tenth of a second to hit the ball once it's released from the hand. So that's one of the hardest things that you can do in sport. But it's only one particular crucial factor. Now, I'm, again, not busting balls on baseball. I think that the people that play that at a high level have immense amount of skill and immense amount of sporting ability. But again, is it the hardest sport? I'm not so sure. The next sport that I think should be ranked on the list, just based on my own personal opinion, is like guys that ride the Tour de France. Those dudes are totally insane. You look at Lance Armstrong in his prime, that guy could sprint up a hill faster than most people could ride a bike on flat ground. The amount of power and the amount of days that they have to create that power under all kinds of conditions is just totally insane. You look at them going up the mountains, down the mountains, wind, rain. I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of pressure that these guys are on to race these bicycles. Now, the only reason I don't put them as one of the hardest ones is because it's cyclic. You do it the same way all the time. But at the end of the day, if you really sit down and watch an entire Tour de France, nobody, no matter what your sporting background, can't be impressed by what they do. Now, don't get me wrong. There are a ton of other sports that I think could be in this list, but we're making a 6 to 8 minute video, and we're not going to go into them. But those three, I think, probably take, I would say, at least in the top 5. But what's the hardest one, in my opinion? Well, I'll get to it. I think the hardest one to do is Olympic weightlifting. And the reason why is that, let's go over some variables. One, you have to be insanely strong. The last good American Olympic weightlifter was Shane Hammond. Shane Hammond had a 1,000-pound back squat that he literally dropped into the hole and exploded. He had close to a 40-inch vertical in his prime at 350 pounds. You have to be so explosive and so aggressive to be able to do those kind of weights in Olympic lifting. It's just unbelievable, okay? The other thing is coordination. Some of these guys in the lighter weight classes are balancing 3.5 times or plus body weight on clean and jerks and snatches. That is just totally insane if you look at the amount of ability that it's going to take to do that. So looking at Olympic lifting, as far as how strong you have to be to do those weights at a world-class level, how coordinated you have to be to do those events, right? And then how well your technique in those lifts have to be, which makes it, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to do. And the reason that you see other countries like China and old Eastern Bloc countries do so well in Olympic lifting, don't get it twisted. It's not the drugs. It's the fact that they understand long-term progression. What does this mean? This means in Olympic lifting, some of your greatest Olympic lifters, they start at the ages of 4 to 6 years old in preparation for Olympic lifting. Now, are they lifting maximal weights at that age? No. But they usually have a gymnastics background and they're starting to learn the technique with a dowel rod. This comes back to my original opinion of why the Americans will never, or probably will never, win a gold medal in Olympic lifting. Why? Because they don't understand anything about long-term progression. And what that means is that even if we look at our exercise studies, right? Like right now, I'm going to do a video eventually on muscle confusion. And I know that's a huge topic, and everybody that does very basic training or wants to sell simplistic programs wants to bust everybody's balls that talks about muscle confusion, and we'll get into that. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at training in a 10, 15, or maybe even a 20-year process, there is no way you're going to be able to sustain that level of consistent volume in particular lifts. Now, how the Olympic lifters do it is they start off easy. They're starting off with dowel rods and they're learning technique. So by the time it's time to actually increase loads, their form is already impeccable. What do most of us do here in the United States? Well, I can tell you, most of us think we need to get strong first and then we're going to learn Olympic lifts. That is a bad move, because at the end of the day, you need to be stronger, more mobile, and more conditioned and more coordinated by the time your strength level rises, which makes this a long-term process. So at the end of the day, if you look at the amount of mobility that Olympic lifters need, the amount of strength that they need, and the amount of coordination that they need, there's really no other sport that's harder than that. The other thing that you have to realize is that in the old Soviet system, the guys like Alexiev and all those other guys were considering and actually rotated a system that had 70 different movements for only 2 exercises. So the clean and jerk and the snatch had 70 variations that they rotated. How did they figure this out? Well, the system initially started with only 4 to 6 movements, and half the people that did the system were ended up broke or burned out. So what they did was, as they increased exercises, they increased the amount of people that were able to do the movements. So the point is that the hardest sport in existence is the clean and jerk and the snatch, in my opinion, because it needs all of these variables. And like I said, all other sports get my immense respect, no matter what level it is, but especially at the highest level, because let's be honest, only a handful of us in each generation are going to either, 1, be able to break a world record, or 2, be able to do anything at a professional level. So this isn't meant to knock any other sports that either weren't mentioned, or not to say that football or basketball or baseball isn't up there in those ranks. But if you truly think about how strong you need to be to break an all-time world record clean and jerk or snatch, how mobile you need to be, how explosive you need to be, and how good your technique needs to be, it definitely makes you weigh your mind on thinking that Olympic lifting might be one of the hardest ones. So I hope you enjoyed this. This was just more for entertainment. List what you think your sports are the hardest ones to do down at the bottom, and let's start a conversation on it. But my vote is Olympic weightlifting.